Okay, so this is the one that I told you is basically like that corona section I showed you the diagram. So up here is going to be the base of the epiglottis, right? Then here you're going to have the false vocal fold and the true vocal fold. What's this going to be here? What? Cartilage. That's the laryngeal cartilage, right? The biggest one. Then what's the next one below that going to be? Cricoid cartilage, right? So you do remember some anatomy. And then the tracheal rings are going to start down here. So you're going to have, what kind of cartilage is this? What kind of cartilage is in the epiglottis? Elastic, right? Yeah. And what kind of cartilage doesn't have a perichondrium? Fibro. Good. You agree with that, so I can ask all that. Okay, so, you know, the main thing to keep in mind is here's the elastic cartilage with the perichondrium. This is going to be that pseudostratified columnar epithelium. And you can see, as you go to higher power, you can actually see the cilia, and you can see the basal body. So as you go along, the bulk of this is going to be that type of epithelium. Okay. Now we're going along the false vocal fold. And again, you can see it's the same type of epithelium all along here. Then if we jump over to here, now we're starting to get to that stratified squamous epithelium. And you can see you're transitioning. Here you've got more of a cuboidal epithelium, and then you're going to transition to that stratified squamous as you get out on that vocal fold. And you can see this has the upper cells are squamous now, so we've got a stratified squamous epithelium. We've got a dense connective tissue core, which is the vocal ligament, and as you keep going down, okay, you can still see. And now we're starting to transition back. You can see you go from the upper cells being squamous to the upper cells being more cuboidal, and then you're getting into that, back into that pseudostratified epithelium as you keep going down. And that's pretty much what you're going to see all the rest of the way down the trachea. Okay, so you should be able to recognize that. As you go down, here's some of those glands. Again, so that should be pretty straightforward. So on this one, you want to make sure you recognize the different types of epithelium. You recognize the different types of cartilage. We've done that before, so that shouldn't be a problem. And then that's pretty much, you know, you should recognize some of this other tissue. What kind of tissue is this? Skeletal muscle, right? Yep. So you can actually see the striations. Right. You can see the peripheral nuclei. So that's what you should be looking for on this one. This one's pretty much the same. We don't have to spend much time on this one. This is just the trachea itself. And again, you've got the cartilage and stuff. This one is not a great example of the pseudostratified epithelium. You can see the ciliation. You can see the goblet cells pretty well. But the epithelium is a little low. You know, typically you'll see. So the other one's a little bit better for being able to look at the pseudostratified columnar epithelium than this one. But you should just at least have a bit of an idea on this one. Don't spend a lot of time on it. Just make sure you can recognize what's different than otherwise. Not that great. And this one's the lung. And even at low power, you can see some of the different structures. You can see that this is a bronchus here, okay? And then you've got some bronchioles. And then you're going to get down to those terminal bronchioles with the respiratory bronchiole coming out of it. And you can actually see some of those alveolar ducts and the alveoli. So even at low power, you can see quite a bit on this one. But as you go to higher power, you can really confirm it. This you can tell, this is the hyaline cartilage in the wall, so that you know that this is a bronchus. Okay, so you can see patches of that around. And some more here. So this is kind of a cut. Here we can see down towards the terminal bronchioles or respiratory bronchioles. There you can feel the alveoli coming off. And that's leading into an alveolar duct. An alveolar duct is more just kind of a conceptual state that leads into the alveolar sac, but it's going to have alveolar coming off of it, so it just looks like, you know, another space with alveoli. But you've got your alveolar duct, your alveolar sac, and then the alveoli coming off of that. Okay, and then if you go to higher power, you can start to see some of these structures. So like I said, if you see a squamous cell on the surface, like here, and here, and here, and here, the squamous cells on the surface are going to be the type 1 histology. And here you're going to see this one right here is on the surface, but this one's in the wall. And even though they look very similar, this one would be a type 1 histology, and this would be a fibroblast, because it's embedded in the wall. Here again, these you can see the fibroblasts here, because they're in the wall, they're not on the surface. So that's basically how you're going to tell the difference between them, by where they are, not exactly what they look like. So if they're right up against that air space, just call it a type 1 histology. If they're in the wall, call it a fibroblast. And that's all you have to do now. Understand, theoretically, depending on how you section it, some of those that appear to be in the wall could actually be on the surface, you know, facing you or in, you know. So it may not be exact, but it's good enough for what we need right now. Okay. So just go by where they are. And don't worry about the subtlety. And again, make sure in all of this stuff, you're not going to be able to identify every cell. So just look for the typical cells with the typical features and be able to identify those. Okay. On this test, we should ask you typical looking structures. We're not asking for you to identify pathological things. We're not asking you to identify everything. But if you can identify the typical ones, you'll be fine. Okay. So just go for that. Don't worry about doing everything. And then you're going to have some macrophages on the surface kind of wandering around. And see these kind of glassy appearance structures? Those are actually the red blood cells within the capillaries. So there's, you know, where the capillaries are. So all this is actually here. So here's a nice macrophage here. Sometimes you'll see this kind of stuff. This is actually carbon deposits within the lungs. Sometimes you'll see those in the macrophages, because they're part of their job is to, you know, take that up. So you may see something like that. So look around that one. This one doesn't have really any bronchi or bronchioles in it, but it is a little thinner section. So it's a little easier to see some of the contents of the wall of the alveoli. So this is a little better for that in some ways. So again, you can see the large cells on the surface are going to be the macrophages. You can see the type 2 pneumocytes are going to be the cuboidal ones that are on the surface. Here's a nice big macrophage over here. Here's another one here. You can see the capillaries. In this one, you can actually see the blood cells. This is the capillary endothelial cells with a couple of red blood cells in it. And then as you look along the surface, the squamous cells on the surface, like I said, are going to be the type 1s. And the squamous cells inside the wall are going to be the fibroblasts. Okay? And this one you can actually kind of see some of those elastic fibers, the circular skin, the elastic fibers too. But here's a nice grouping of macrophages crawling on the wall. So, like I said, they're also called dust cells. So you should be able to see some of those. Okay, here's another macrophage. Here's a type 1 pneumocyte, type 1 pneumocyte, type 2 pneumocyte. So just, you know, go by their shape and their location to be able to tell one from the other. And then this one is going to be that olfactory epithelium. So what material is this? Catacomb. Good. What material is this? somebody says smooth muscle, why do you think it's smooth muscle? Because it's pink, right? But do you notice anything about this? If this were smooth muscle, how many nuclei would you see? A lot, right? So what does this tell you when they're so far apart? It tells you there's a lot of extracellular matrix, right? So you know that it's got to be some kind of connective tissue, okay? And what kind of connective tissue has cells and lacunae? It's either got to be bone or cartilage, right? Notice how far apart they are? You never see them that far apart in cartilage, do you? So this has to be bone, right? And so you know that you've got the bony structure of the nasal cavity, right? So this is bone. Just trying to keep you honest. And then this is going to be that olfactory epithelium along here. So what are the upper nuclei contained in? What type of cell? Did you say basal? Upper and basal? Subtentacular supportive cells, right? What are the ones down here? And the basal surface? Basal cells. And then the one in the middle? The olfactory sensory ones. I'm glad you said that. Actually, I am glad you said that. Because what I want is when you answer a question on the test, make sure it actually makes sense. I mean, not that but, you know, it's amazing to me, like on the practical especially, like let's say I pointed at cardiac tissue, you know, cardiac muscle cells. And then I also pointed at an intercalated disc. And someone will, you know, the question will be, what's this structure? And the answer will be intercalated disc. And then I'll ask on the same slide, what's this tissue? And somebody will put smooth muscle. It just doesn't make sense, okay? So make sure they at least make sense, because if you can make it make sense, you're going to get a lot more right than you just kind of jump into it. So make sure that you think about it and that it actually makes sense. Now, what some people do is they don't know the answer to either one, so they're guessing on both of them, and they happen to get one right and the other wrong. So that I understand. But if you do know part of it, you should at least be able to answer the other part. Okay. So up here is where you're going to have the cilia, the motile cilia. And you can actually see these little bulbs, these little bulges right here. Hopefully you can see that. That's actually the top of the olfactory sensory cell actually bulges a little bit into the lumen. And then coming off that bulb is where the cilia are coming off. So you can actually see that little bulge. I know it doesn't show it real well, but when you look at this on your computer, you should be able to see that. So that's the olfactory epithelium. And that's just what you need to look at, just those 5 slides. And you should be good to go.